I'm calling the meeting of the Lunenburg School Committee to order. We are here at the Bellotta Meeting Room at Town Hall. Let's see. This meeting, in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised this meeting is being broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. It is also broadcast on the Public Access Facebook page and will be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting. If you wish to join via Zoom, the meeting ID is 766-316-7607. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. So would you please, if you are able, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is public comments. The school committee welcomes comments from the public. Comments addressing topics under the scope and authority of the school committee are welcome at either public comment section. Please remember this is public comment, not discussion, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Each public comment section has a maximum of 10 minutes. Comments about individual students are prohibited by state and federal law. If you have a public comment, you're welcome to come up. You need to state your name and address, please. Go ahead, Mr. Plant.
My name is Darrell Plant, and I live at 490 Lancaster Ave. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here tonight to speak to the residents of Lunenburg. My wife and I have prepared statements to the school committee for nearly 2 years now. Our most recent statements were presented on February 1st and 15th and March 1st and 15th. We urge you all to listen to them on Lunenburg Public Access Channel and make your own judgment. As we've said to this committee before, we stand in opposition to a mandatory social-emotional learning program, as well as many of the recommendations of the equity audit. If a child does need emotional support, however, we absolutely want them to receive it. Why do we oppose a mandatory SEL program for all children? When it comes to our son, my wife and I discuss, debate, and align on a course of action in every aspect of our child's life. We do this because we believe providing our child with consistent direction and advice is one of the most important things we can do as parents. A social worker or teacher cannot duplicate this, and it would be the height of arrogance if this committee believes this administration has the capacity to manage the emotional well-being of 1,600 souls when it has failed our children in reading, writing, and arithmetic. At the March 15th meeting, using the data and studies previously provided by this committee, we proved the SEL program has been a demonstrable failure to our students. The MCAS and iReady test scores at all levels, K through 12, have been in steady state of decline since the inception of the SEL program. In fact, our elementary school is one of the worst performing schools in the entire region. Even Fitchburg and Leominster are performing better. This committee and the administration have been and continue to ignore the facts, and these are the facts which came from this district's very own 2022 report card. Instead of addressing the academic failures, what has this committee and administration decided to do? To infuse yet another radical political agenda called equity into our schools. And when asked to define what equity means to each of them individually, only one member of this committee attempted to do so. Let me ask this: if we can neuter every child by indoctrinating them through social engineering or an SEL program so that not one child is bullied, will it have been worth it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plant. Are there any other comments this evening?
Hi, I am Julie Long. I live at 569 West Townsend Road in Lunenburg. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's more of a question. I just became aware yesterday that this meeting was occurring, and I know some time ago the equity program had been mentioned and that there was supposed to be decision-making around it, but I just saw yesterday that there was a Q&A. So am I to understand that I was supposed to submit my questions weeks ago, or is this something where I can actually present questions today? If you want to answer, if that's okay.
Well, I'll answer that. That's a very factual question I can answer. We had requested questions prior to this meeting so we could get the answers, so we would be able to do that.
Okay.
It was sent home to families
Yes.
that we were doing that, and we asked for those questions to come in. If you do have questions that do not come up in the question and answer, there is a public comment section at the end. Let us know what they are, and we will make sure you get those answers.
Okay, and just one other question, and maybe that will be answered, so I'm just going to put it out there, and we can wait and see if it gets answered. As far as, I did read through the document that had been sent. I wasn't clear on how this is going to be implemented in the educational system. Is that something that is going to be provided in a more clear way? Like, for example, will there, say, be a history class that presents what it is this program is trying to do? Will it be implemented in the schools? Like, how is this going to unfold? I think a lot of people are very unclear about it. I think when they see an email or a document about it, they see the word equity, and it's such a nice word, and it all sounds really good, but someone like me, not entirely clear how it's going to unfold, and I think it would be really good for people of Lunenburg, especially with children in the school system, to have a better idea of what this really means. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Are there any other public comments from the public? Anyone on the board have a comment this evening?
I'd just like to wish anyone who celebrates a happy Passover, and that's it for now.
Thank you. All right, then. Then we will move on to the chair's report. I met with Michelle Beliza, the director of the Boys and Girls Club. At that meeting also was Representative Kushmerek, Representative Scarsdale, Mrs. Tusigno, and a few others on March 24th to discuss the mental health challenges of the youth we work with. They, the Boys and Girls Club, are working on submitting a grant application to the Health Foundation of Central Mass to support our students and other students that attend the Boys and Girls Club in the area of mental and behavioral health, both preventative and to support them. I assured Mrs. Beliza we would help them out in any way we could. Last night, I spoke at the Select Board meeting to communicate our transportation policy to them and to any community members listening. Thank you to Mr. Jeffries for allowing us to spread the word on transportation during their meeting. At the caucus on March 27th, Mr. Beardmore and Mrs. Brzezowski, hope I said that right, were nominated for school committee and will appear on the May 20th ballot. And that's what I have this evening. Next is to review and approve the minutes. We have regular meeting sessions March 8th, March 13th, and March 22nd. Has everybody taken a look at those? And does anyone have any questions about any of those minutes?
I do not.
Okay, well then, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the March 8th, the March 13th, and the March 22nd, 2023 minutes.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, those minutes are approved. Now we have review and approve line item transfers. Mr. Cassidy?
Good evening, everyone. Mike Cassidy, Business Manager. In an effort of transparency, I did break up this transfer into 3 separate and distinct transfers tonight. And let me share those with the public. So transfer A, as I describe it, is transferring $9,134 among different accounts. Funding is needed in 4 specific line items, which is the TCP secretarial account. That is due to some overtime that was given to all district secretaries for a curriculum project that needed to get done in January. Actually shifting some of their secretarial overtime to cover that from their schools. High school substitutes, we've just had a tough year at the high school with some long-term leaves. So that account is taking a little bit of a hit. We're taking money from another special ed account, the resource teacher line item. Athletic coaches was slightly under budgeted at $1,934 to balance that out. And that is for the fall and winter coaches. And then finally, custodial overtime at Turkey Hill. And there's just been some turnover over there with a new senior. And there was a big hit covering a long period of overtime for the fire alarm. That was a 24-hour coverage for multiple days. Next is, as I describe it, as line item B, transfer B. These are basically school-based transfers. And I did revise this today, so if you had seen this before, I did make some adjustments. I actually identified, I realized when I was reviewing this, I didn't identify the either the department or the school where the money was coming from. So Turkey Hill is looking for $42 for a last purchase for the end of the year. Some additional costs in shipping. There's some training that's associated with Turkey Hill, and that totals an additional $511. Once again, at the middle school, they did an end-of-the-year purchase that went over $345. And finally, this is we are still working on these numbers, and as soon as we get them, we'll share them with the school committee. But there's been a tremendous amount of students going out for hospitalization in the district this year, and the district is responsible for tutoring those students while they're out. I may be back for another transfer on that. So we're doubling that line item this year.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
How do we deliver those services? Are those done by our own staff, or do we outsource that, or how does that happen?
I think it's an outside agency that provides those tutoring services. Our staff doesn't go into the hospitals or anything like that. Final transfer tonight is a $1,000 transfer to the repair and maintenance of equipment. This is a result of that last storm, and our equipment really took a beating, and we would like to repair that for our spring work. So the action of the school committee tonight is for your consideration approving all transfers, or each transfer one at a time.
Unless there's any questions. Mr. Beardmore?
I just have a question specific to the last item. Was there a particular piece of equipment that sustained some damage in this past storm? or-
It was the John Deere equipment was the most pricey one.
Okay.
Let me see if I can. I had Mr. Terry's notes here. And it really doesn't define exactly what piece of
We can
equipment.
follow up
But
later, I'm
these
sure.
are the smaller pieces of
Yeah, no,
equipment.
yeah.
It's not pickup trucks or
not
anything
a
like
truck,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
I have no problem approving all of them at the same time. So if I can have a motion to do so?
I'll make a motion to approve all line item transfers presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for working that out so it was very easy to follow what was going where. Appreciate it. Okay, the superintendent's report. Three to sign.
Good evening, everyone. I have a rather lengthy list of updates this evening. I have news on grants. We had recently submitted for 4 grants, and we were recipients of 3 of the 4 grants. So the first grant is the Accelerating Literacy Through High-Quality Instructional Materials. The money received through this grant will contribute to the purchase of new high-quality curriculum for English language arts in grades 6 through 8, as well as professional development to support program implementation. Part of the curriculum materials, we will receive both paper and digital materials for our students and for teachers. The second grant was the Deeper Learning Implementation Grant. The Deeper Learning Implementation Grant provides funding for schools to expand their use of high-quality materials, cultivate effective instructional practices, and develop student learning experiences that advance deeper learning for all students. Lunenburg will use the funding from this grant to offer stipends for teachers to work during the summer to refine our instructional practices and provide deeper learning experiences in the ELA and math curriculum for grades K through 5. The grant will also contribute to our purchase of new high-quality ELA materials for grades 6 through 8 and provide stipends for those teachers to spend time this summer unpacking the units of the new curriculum in preparation for implementation this fall. The third grant is a Student Opportunity Act evidence-based practice grant. This is a multi-year grant. This year, in the current fiscal year, we have received monies. We will also receive monies in FY '24 and '25. However, each of those years, we'll have to submit an application, but it's not a competitive process. We are in the cycle for the 3 years. This particular grant will allow us to hire a co-teaching coach to work with both our general education teachers in the classroom as well as special education teachers, grades K through 8. This will help support the creation of instructional plans that are rigorous and purposeful and designed to meet the needs of all students. The coach will work alongside our literacy and math specialists to provide professional development on specific inclusive practices to strengthen student support. The grant amount will also support the purchase of supplies for this particular new hire. This you'll be taking up later in the agenda with permission to post this position. At that time, our Title I coordinator will speak to the importance of this grant-funded position in terms of attaining the goals that we have set out. The last grant that we had applied to was around playful learning. However, because we were an applicant, we were invited to participate in the Playful Learning Institute pilot. As part of this, a team of staff from our district will attend 2 full PD days with the Department of Ed in June. Through this professional development, we will gain tools and strategies to intentionally design and embed playful learning across the course of the day. The playful learning will support deep dives into content, create equitable access for learning for all children, and create many varied opportunities for authentic assessment, particularly during instructional blocks across all content areas. Lunenburg will create an action plan for incorporating play, which will be supported with our local budget rather than a grant fund. So stay tuned, more on that will be coming. An update on our family school partnership program that we're involved with the Department of Ed. The district team had a meeting with the facilitators on March 20th and an independent team meeting without the facilitators this past Monday. Our next cross-district meeting with all the districts that are participating in the program will be on April 27th. At that meeting, we will be discussing strategies for our work in building stronger family school partnerships. We are planning to present the work to the school committee at the conclusion of our participation in this program in early June, so likely the second or even the last scheduled meeting in June. I'm very happy to say that finally we have a new communication medium. We've been trying to nail this down for quite some time. We will be sending a notification from my office to all families later this week, hopefully tomorrow, that we will be adding a text message feature to our school messenger platform. School messenger is the one that we use to do our blast out emails and our automated phone calls. We will now also be able to do automated push out text messages. Parents will also receive, after our email, an email from School Messenger directly advising parents how to opt out if they wish to opt out of receiving text messages. Honestly, this is really very timely for us, as we have several reminders over the next few weeks to send out about the deadline for our transportation forms, which will take me next to the transportation update. At the end of the day, on April 1st, the day we pushed out the link to the transportation form, by the end of the day, 622 forms were submitted. I can't speak to whether or not how many of those were duplicate forms, but that's the number that came in by the end of the very first day. As of today, we have 890 forms submitted. Again, we haven't culled through to pull out any of the duplicates. While this sounds very promising, and we're very happy to have had this strong a response, I want to caution everybody, this is not too far ahead of the response we had early last year when we initially pushed the form out. However, we have provided links to the form, the policy, and the procedure document. All of those documents, the links are posted on the district webpage, and they were sent out to all families via email. Messages regarding the deadline to complete the form were included in my newsletter, Highlights and Spotlights, as well as the principal's weekly family emails that are sent out on Fridays. Those reminders will continue. We have also worked with the Public Safety Department, and we have secured use of the mobile digital road sign to alert residents that the form must be submitted by May 1st. The plan is to place this in an appropriate and safe location along Electric Avenue, and it should be out there tomorrow. The message is also going to be displayed on our middle high school digital sign on Mass Ave. You might have noticed that the sign is dark. When we had the power outages with the last storm, something happened with the electrical line. You'll also note that the speed sign and the school zone sign along Mass Ave also are not functioning. But we've had somebody in to take a look at what needs to be done to get that repaired. As soon as the sign is functional again, we will absolutely be posting the reminder of the May deadline. We drafted and sent a message, which is now scrolling on the PAC bulletin board. And there should also be a message in the Lunenburg Ledger this Friday relative to the change in the policy and the form needing to be completed and the new deadline. We've already got a plan in place for each school to ensure that their outreach is done that last week in April. We'll give people an opportunity to submit forms up until then before we start the outreach. We will be sending out weekly email reminders, as well as that deadline is approaching, a district-wide email final reminder about the deadline. That will also have a robocall with it. And we will also be sending out a text message to remind people of that deadline. We plan to put paper notices into backpacks grades K through 5. We stopped at grade 5 because I think parents have stopped looking in backpacks by the time students get to the middle school, so it probably wouldn't be quite as effective. We have also ordered and will be placing lawn signs out on the school grounds along Mass Ave, Northfield, and Oak Ave as well. And of course, our chair made public comment or made the announcement at the select board meeting last evening as well. Lots of push to get the message out. Extended day and early learning center for 2023-24. As you know, the registration for those programs, both the fall extended day before and after school, the extended day summer program, and the fall early learning center. Registrations opened on April 3rd. All of those communications were sent out with links to the form for registration. This was the first time we did a digital registration for these programs, similar to the way that we are doing and did the transportation form last year, which we found to be very helpful. So this was a new experience this year. As you know, I've mentioned at every meeting since Mrs. Gillette was here to present the handbooks, and she mentioned it at that time as well, that the registration would open April 3rd. We reached our cap in the afternoon on each day, our cap of 75, by 2 o'clock on Tuesday. So the afternoon is now closed. We're still taking registrations. People will be placed on a wait list. Ultimately, what we know from past experience is as folks get closer to the start of the school year, sometimes plans change and they withdraw and then seats open. So people who are on a wait list would be placed prior to the opening of school. So we anticipate that we might be able to provide placement for a small number of folks in August. But we'll keep folks updated on that. We did notify all families as soon as we had reached capacity. We will be posting updates on the Community Schools Department web page. So folks can sort of monitor right there. Currently, we still have seats available in the morning for the extended day program. We have seats available through the summer for the summer program, and we do still have seats available for the early learning center. I just want to take an opportunity to remind families that they received a confirmation email that their form was successfully submitted. However, they will receive a separate email from Mrs. Gillette confirming placement in the program. So I don't want anybody to assume that because their form was submitted that they are guaranteed a spot. So that communication is ongoing currently. A few April reminders. Our next school committee meeting is actually next week. Our typical cycle would have had our next regular meeting falling on the school vacation week. That meeting will be hybrid from the middle high school at 6:30. Also on April 14th, which is Friday, the Friday heading into school vacation week, that's an early release day, district-wide, for staff professional development. The week of April 17th, schools are closed for the April vacation week. Offices will also be closed on the Monday, April 17th, in observance of Patriots' Day. And May is right around the corner. So another reminder, May 1st is the deadline for those transportation forms to be submitted. 5 o'clock is that time on May 1st. Just a reminder that if forms are not submitted by the deadline, students may be placed on a wait list for up to 60 business days. May 3rd will be our first school committee meeting in May, which would be hybrid here from Town Hall, again at 6:30. And a reminder that the annual town meeting is on May 6th, 10 a.m. at the middle high school. And lastly, just to announce more publicly, Mrs. Champagne, the principal of the Turkey Hill Elementary School, has announced already to her staff and to the Turkey Hill families that she will be retiring on June 30th. We will have more to say about Mrs. Champagne's service and impact on the district when we celebrate all of our retirees in June. Sorry, lots of news to share, but that's all I have.
Thank you. Congratulations on all those grants. That's wonderful. That's wonderful news.
It just helps to accelerate the momentum that
Absolutely.
we've got. So we're really excited about the grants coming in.
Great, thank you very much. And now our student representative. Hello, Sean.
Mine's not quite as long.
Not as much.
Thank you.
The primary school will be hosting a literacy night on April 13th, and Plymouth State University's Tire Production Company performed for all students in the primary school last week. Turkey Hill Elementary School MCAS is being held across the next 2 weeks for grades 3 through 5, and the Lunenburg Middle School grade 8 ELM MCAS is April 4th through 5th. Lunenburg High School grade 10 MCAS is May 16th through 17th, and a spring concert is on Friday, May 15th at 7. Quarter 3 ends for all grades across the district on April 6th, and an early release day will be April 14th prior to spring break, which is April 17th through the 21st. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Now, under new business, we have a donation.
So I would invite the Laurens as well as Mr. Cassidy.
Mike Cassidy, business manager. Tonight, there's a donation that's being presented to the school committee. Without further ado, I'll go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. Ron and Nancy Lawrence, thank you for having us here tonight. We are here representing the Connor Lorenz Memorial Fund, and we were approached by Dave and Amy King several months ago about an opportunity to assist with the concession stand upgrades. We then met with Dr. Burnham and Mr. Cassidy and came to a resolution on what we would support. And with that, we would like to present the school committee with a check in the amount of $4,985.66 to cover the recent upgrades and the continued maintenance of the concession stand.
Wow.
We thank you very much. That's very, very generous and something that so many families and students will use over many, many years. It's very generous of you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And I think Mr. Cassidy has some photos of the upgrades,
Oh,
so you can get a sneak
Terrific.
peek of the snack shack.
So this donation is helping the interior of the building. The new shelving, new barrels, mats. Let's see if I can. This is right in the middle of the concession stand, and I would imagine a lot of you have volunteered in here, so you know what it was like before. In fact, some of the tables were moved out of the way so we could install these new metal tables. These are preparation tables. There's storage underneath as well for our
And they're
groups.
movable, so.
oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
This was quite an undertaking, new sinks to meet all the new code requirements. All this work was done by our maintenance staff to reduce the cost, but a lot of the donation is going to, the supplies
The materials.
to do that.
We're currently
the
very fortunate to have a licensed plumber as part of our maintenance team.
Oh, that's wonderful.
2 new refrigerators and some shelving, new microwaves, and then just some floor matting and benches. So I think this, my opinion, this donation is important to the community. This is offsetting any costs that our users would have to pay to cover those costs. So this donation is benefiting, directly benefiting our boosters, anyone who uses that concession stand. So I encourage the acceptance of this. And from what I understand, Ron and Nancy were part of the original installation or construction of that concession stand. So there's actually a history with them, with this building. So we're very, very fortunate to have allies like Ron and Nancy. So thank you.
We thank you very, very much. Could I have a motion to accept this very generous donation?
I'll make a motion to accept the donation with gratitude.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very,
Thank you
very
so
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Up. Now we have the appointment of a school committee member for contract negotiations. So we have contract negotiations coming up, and we need...
Correct. Historically, these meetings for negotiation occur around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at the conclusion of the custodial staff workday. So that's just something to consider as we select somebody to join the team to negotiate the next contract with the custodians and our CAF workers.
Are we going to run both concurrently? We're going to do one and then the other?
I think given the timeline,
Yeah.
I think that we could begin conversations with both. I think historically, the custodians have come to an agreement first, and then that generally informs the agreement with the food service staff. Thoughts on that, Mr. Cassidy?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Just want to highlight, we just received this. There's no date on this letter. So we haven't been holding this back, from the committee. I just want to make that
And
point.
Mr. Housey is eager to get started and would like to start the week of April vacation.
I got the impression that he'll be flexible
Yes.
as soon as a committee member is appointed. And we can work out that initial meeting, which I anticipate will be a ground rules meeting.
Sure.
And then we'll get into negotiations after that.
So what it ends up being is basically availability. Who is available at that time of the day?
I am not available.
You are not.
I'm hesitant because it could continue going and I won't be here.
So
till- no.
I don't know if that's something you want to look at, or should I take, because chances are I can be.
I can be available with the exception of the last week of this month because I have a previous commitment, but I can be available.
Through May.
I just have a question for clarification. So we received a letter specific to the custodians union, right? So we have not received a letter with intent to open negotiations from the food service workers yet?
Correct. And my recollection is the last contract, it was a conversation with one of the managers.
Right. They don't have any association.
They're not
with it.
affiliated?
Yeah, they're not
Okay.
affiliated. So they're
So it's less formal?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're an informal group that we invite in.
Okay, fair. And both of these contracts expired this spring?
June 30th.
June
yeah.
30th, this summer? Yeah, okay.
I think, in my opinion, I think that it could be either side starts the negotiation.
Yeah. No, I just was looking for
Joe.
clarification. I was glad to receive the letter, and it was a lingering question after the budget. So I'd be happy to do that.
I think it would be a good experience for all of us
Yes.
to serve
Yep.
on different
On one and
negotiations.
another time, yeah,
And I'm limited on at least one of them, so.
Yes.
for sure. So do I have a nomination to nominate?
I'll make a
Mr.
motion to
Beardmore?
nominate Mr. Beardmore for the negotiations with the custodial and CAF.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty, then it will be Mr. Beardmore. Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Welcome. Glad to do it.
And then permission to post the co-teaching coach.
So I would invite Mr. Cassidy back again, but this time he will be joined by Mrs. McLean, who is our Title I reading specialist in the district, to talk about this particular position.
In front of the school, Mike Cassidy, business manager, in front of the committee tonight is a permission to post for a new position, co-teaching coach. This position will be funded by grants, or a grant, the evidence-based practice grant that Dr. Burnham mentioned at the beginning of the school committee meeting. This was a recently awarded grant. We're looking to appoint an employee or an applicant this fiscal year and then over the next 2 years. I'd like to introduce Deidre McLean, and you can talk about the dynamics of this position much better than I can.
So with our SOA grant, when we first started, we'll be starting our third year. The first one, the focus was the MTSS to get a reading specialist, Title I specialist, to set up the MTSS process. Then they hired me. Then that was November of last year. Then we wrote the grant to get the high-quality curriculum, which is one aspect of the SOA. Then after we got that and we started putting things in place, we have now really started working with developing the MTSS structure along with the Tier 1 core instruction, having that high-quality curriculum, having the evidence-based, state-approved screeners for dyslexia and reading struggles, as well as we are developing math screeners so that this process we can hopefully catch students who need support and struggle, or who are struggling at the primary instead of waiting until after MCAS in their third grade to realize there's a problem. So with that in place, the only way to really impact the district and make a change so it is sustainable is to now train the whole entire staff with the new updates with the reading, with the new math screeners, and what is our overall purpose with this SOA. And having that coach would allow us to work on all 4 domains of the grant instead of just choosing one domain, which is what we previously done, like we chose early literacy. But by having this coach to support me and Annika and Amy, we will be able to deliver the message to everyone who needs to, so it's a sustainable change. I would think it would take, like a year or 2 for implementation to make sure everybody is on the same page.
Absolutely.
And so I just want to make sure you knew that we could have chosen one area, but the reason why we didn't is because it is to complete this path we've already started.
And essentially, this one position will impact all areas of the SOA.
Would be the best way to impact all areas.
Yep.
And just in case people are watching and don't know what that means,
Student Opportunity Act, every district under the Student Opportunity Act was required to develop and submit for approval by the state a Student Opportunity Act plan. And annually, we have to submit data on the progress that we're making on those areas outlined in the plan. And early literacy has been part of that from the get-go. The curriculum, the high-quality curriculum as well. So it's just, we have stayed the course with our priority focus areas. And we have, again, you stay focused, and when new monies become available, you grab them so that you can accelerate the work that you're doing in those areas as best you can. That's why we went after the money for the literacy and math curriculum. The grant, another grant that I mentioned this evening, another ELA curriculum for the middle school. We will also be looking at math curriculum at the middle school level. So in other words, there's a plan, there's a big picture plan, and it's the SOA, those of you who were on the board when that plan first had to be submitted, connects back to the strategy for continuous improvement. So it's not a separate thing that we're doing. Everything is connected and purposeful. And we're really excited to have, a new staff member with some expertise that can help grow the capacity of all of our staff.
One thing I want to just share, it's very unusual to actually be able to have a plan and stick to it and follow through. And when I came in the district, I was part of that plan. So then we have evolved and totally stayed on track. It's very rare in a school district to pick with an SOA grant with changeover to stay this focused. But like very first hired in November, we wrote the grant for the high quality curriculum. We were able to write it again for this year for middle school. So that takes care, of all of the things that we're trying to do, because the embedded PD in the high quality curriculum about reading specialists, why the science of reading, why we separate the components, how to really analyze these universal screeners so that we plan instruction on a strength-based instead of a deficit-based. We've always planned by deficit-based. Wait till special ed, figure it out. So now it's more figure it out before so that we don't have to wait.
could you talk a little bit about how a teaching coach could help with those students that are that need to be more academically challenged, that are more rising to the top of the grouping?
Yes, ma'am. So generally, like, we're a small district, we all wear multiple hats. I am a coach, a literacy coach, but you needed me more to be the Title I coordinator and to set the MTSS structure. I'm going to retire. This is like like a passion of mine. I have 2 more years, and I want to, something that is sustainable. And so what I'm hoping that we can do with the coach is to help me get in to train the actual teachers, work with them, instead of me just telling them. This would be on the fly, because we would need, say, for all of our student support meetings, maybe even for a SPED meeting for a student who has a specific learning disability in reading, the past, the intervention, the things we do are very different than just our traditional special education that we've experienced in the past.
But all of the assessments that we're doing provide us data on all of our students, and some of that data indicates that there are students who are ready, they're on grade level, they're ready to be challenged above where they are. So it's been a process. If you go back and look at the strategy for continuous improvement, one of the pieces under culture was developing a culture of data use. That was new to this district. We didn't have assessments that we could do that were standardized, that were aligned with the state standards.
Or that were even norm referenced. And so now
exactly.
We have that. That's all I do is study data. So,
Right.
But what we're able to do is we have a whole population of gifted students that by 3rd and 4th grade get marked off of that track because they're not excelling reading, math equally. But when that happens, just because like you could be very gifted in ELA but struggle in math, by high school you've got to pick a path. You know, if you're going to be that track of advanced or AP classes, this eliminates that. So we can identify early those truly gifted kids who have either dyscalculia or dyslexia, who are above average intelligence but have one learning disability that's holding them back, and so they don't really show us what they know. And we've come a long way with understanding those 2 disorders, but now we can actually do something to impact and not have children suffer for it.
Right, and part of the data use in a classroom by a classroom teacher is setting up learning experiences with choice, but also setting up learning experiences designed to challenge those that are rising above their peer group on grade level material, as well as designing opportunities to work in small group with those students who are struggling in a particular area. And in a class of 20, you might have 4 students that struggle in this particular area in reading, and you might have 3 other students that are struggling in a different area entirely in reading. But when you are able to use that data and you understand how to use that data and you understand what interventions to employ based on the data, you can successfully work and meet the needs of individual kiddos in a classroom so that they don't have to go off to a talented and gifted. They don't have to go for pull-out support services outside of the classroom. That's where we're headed. But teachers, they don't know how to work this way just yet. It's taking a deliberate approach to put in place the tools and develop the strategies in the teacher's toolbox in order to get us there. Deirdre or I could do a workshop and tell teachers, well, this is how you do, and this is what it should look like. Now go do it. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's a lot more complicated than that, and it takes some time for teachers to get comfortable with it, and it takes more time for them to get really skilled with it, and that's why we need the coaches to help them work with the data, interpret what to do, how to set your groups, what interventions to use with this group, with that group. I've said this for a long time. If our teachers knew how to do that, they would be doing it.
It's more of with our teacher prep programs. They come out, they're excellent teachers, but to be truly excellent STAR, you have to be a guidance counselor, a special educator, a reading specialist, an SEI endorsed. They don't come out like with all of these specialists. So that's why all of like math specialists, reading specialists, but we have to work together to build their capacity because they didn't get the training. It's kind of like we're flying the plane and building it at the very same time. And so this would be the only way to do it, is to have somebody do it with me. And so I think the teachers will appreciate it, because I feel like there's been a disconnect. They know, but it's not their, it's not a problem, it's not a mistake that anybody did. We evolved fast, and now we have the people in place and the structure to actually gain momentum.
I think this is a wonderful way to use these funds. I think it's
And
something
we will keep
that's-
writing grants. Anna, I think we have a problem
You
now.
are the grant writers.
Yeah,
You are very good at it. Mr. Beardmore?
So I really appreciate the explanation, and I certainly want to emphasize, and I raised this issue to you when we met a few weeks ago. You know, I understand, the job that you just described to me sounds incredibly difficult, and I don't think I could personally do it, and I'm glad that we have folks like yourself who are
That's a
helping our
passion and
entire
interest.
staff driving this forward. Because it's so difficult, I think that we are really challenged with differentiating and figuring out, particularly at an early age, who the kids are that are capable and have that capacity to really accelerate, and then challenging them and putting them on a path where they can continually be challenged. I think that that's a challenge that we have and part of it is our size. Part of it is that we don't really track at all until kids hit, 8th grade for math, and then when they get into, and I've been told by people who are more expert than I am, like yourselves, that that's the right thing to do. But when you clearly don't have the skill set to really do that two-step process that requires not only conceptually understanding it, but also practicing it and building that expertise and that comfort level, I think that it takes time. And I feel myself, and I know that there are members of the community that don't necessarily have the patience to go along with that time, and there's a tension there. I do have a question about the grant itself.
Mm-hmm.
You had intimated that there were some choices in terms of how we were going to spend this money. So I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit upon that. And then also just the mechanics of it. Is the grant effective today? Is this effective July 1st? Do we know that we're going to have the money to fund the position? Like those kinds of things?
Yep, so as I mentioned earlier, the grant will start this fiscal year, right now.
Okay.
We did post the position with a notation that this was pending school committee approval, so that we could start getting applicants in. And we have some interesting candidates that we're looking to interview. So this position will start now. We will have to resubmit the grant application each year, but we're in the queue. It's not going to be competitive. So we know that we will be able to fund this position next school year and the school year after that.
I guess the
So it's
question
a
that I was
whole
getting
set.
to in terms of the mechanics is, do we know that the grant fully funds the position, or are there other funds that are going to need to come?
Well, the way we wrote the
Fully
grant, we
fund-
wrote it to fund a position and
It
some
was very
supplemental.
purposeful, that grant, as well as the grant to get the summer work, because that's the other part.
Yep.
I have all but how do we then get it from our curriculum office to every single teacher in the district? And so that grant is allowing us to really dive in that one-on-one and truly, because we piloted, we're ready, we know how to adjust the assessments, we know what's working, what we want to include, and then, so that grant's helping us take care of that. This grant will be, we include it for everything, and it was the state is very happy when you have a plan, you're sticking to it, and you have the evidence to support. And so it's like we were just boom, boom, boom with evidence. We did this, now we are here. And so,
So to get back to part of your question, when this SOA came to be and districts had to submit a plan for approval, the department put out guidelines these are priorities that we have set. You, knowing the context of your district, you can select from these priorities and build your district's SOA plan. So we did. The grant that we wrote for connects back to supporting our plan.
Specifically tailored.
Right.
Okay.
But our plan aligns to what the state had set out for parameters for the funding
Right. I
around
think that's an
SOA.
important distinction. I'm glad you took the time to explain that, because typically when you think grant, you think it's a cookie cutter, everybody gets more or less the same thing, and then you kind of fit what you're doing around the meets
Right.
and bounds of the
Right.
grant.
And this is the one
clearly a
time
little
it's
bit
different, and I've
so
never been this
thank you for
because we
explaining that.
are
Yep.
actually.
Yep.
And this is not an entitlement grant where, okay, every district is getting an allocation of money. Please apply it to your SOA plan. This was, there's a grant opportunity.
And not everybody got the same amount of money.
That's right.
We were worried because we wrote, well, this is to fund a administrative position, like,
Yeah.
so, but they saw the plan, the evidence of where we are, that this is going to be of good use and this will get it. So if, I don't know if they'd want to read all of the evidence, but I have it
tonight.
and I will give it to you. Okay.
We'll include it in our end-of-year report. Summer reading.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? So do we have a motion to approve this posting?
I'll make a motion to approve this posting for the co-teaching coach.
Well, second.
Thank
All
you.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you, and
you.
thank you for taking the time to come this evening and talk about it. Okay, next we have the first read of policies 3204, acceptance of
Could I-
gifts. Yes,
Could I suggest, given the folks that we have in the audience tonight, perhaps we could move forward the spring sports report, because the policies reading is going to be a little bit time-consuming, I would
Usually
imagine.
waive the first
we
reading.
usually
though, for
waive
this
the
one.
first reading
I'm just gonna make a
unless...
motion to waive it.
All right, but we have third readings in here. Oh, that's under old business.
Yeah, that's
I
under old
apologize.
business.
I apologize.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
So we do have these first readings, 3204. So you gave me a second chance. You think I could have said it right. 3204, acceptance of gifts, grants, and bequests. 3402, now that was really going to, they're just
Reversed.
flipped around now, see? I'm really having tongue-tied trouble here. 3402, payment procedures. 3406, depository of funds, authorized signatures. 3410, purchasing principles, expenditures, procurement, and authority. Are there anything in those policies that we need to look at? Yes.
I just saw in 3406, there was a double period on the
Oh.
second paragraph on the end. Just to take off that was it.
Well, that sounds good to me.
And I,
If that will change the meaning.
No.
I just wanted to acknowledge that, for those few who may be following along from week to week, that there is a change in the language pertaining to the gifts that we discussed last week
Right,
that I'm good with.
okay. And of course, these are on, or will be, they are on the website. If there's anyone in the public that would like to take a look at these policies, and then they can make comment by emailing one of us or emailing into the central office. And if you have comments, that will be brought back at the second read. We will read these in their entirety at the third read.
And just for the benefit of the public, if you've never sought out a policy on the website, we post them under the school committee link.
Okay, so do I have a motion to waive the first reading of these policies?
I'll make a motion to waive the first reading of these 4 policies mentioned.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. On to spring sports report. Thank you for your hanging out here with us.
And for the public that is not involved with our athletic program, This is our athletic director, Mr. Kevin Bigelow. Thank you for being here.
Good evening.
So maybe we could start with the summary of the winter season
Yeah, sure.
highlights.
We our boys basketball team made the state tournament, which was fun. Went out to South Hadley. Unfortunately, lost in the first round, but got a young squad and things are looking up. Girls hockey also had a good year. We co-op with Leominster, so that's not a home team for us, but we have some players. And actually, today it was released. One of our players, Amanda Allen, was selected to the TNG All-Star team. So it was
wonderful.
a couple of our track athletes and one of our skiers. So overall, it was good. With regards to the spring sports participation, I gotta say that my first impression when I started here was kind of somewhat amazement of how many sports, how many offerings that we had for such a small town. And then when I saw the population in the school, I was even more amazed. I was saying, wow, how do we have 28 offerings here? And I really anticipated that we were going to have trouble, fielding some teams. And this spring, as I field emails from conference opponents time after time again, and people dropping JV programs in certain sports, we have not had to do that. So that's been a pleasant surprise and something that's been awesome. And I credit, our staff, our coaches, people in the building for promoting that. So that's been great. Across the board for all of our sports, with the exception of 2 in the spring, we've gone up pretty significantly with numbers. And I don't know if you guys all have the, So, the 2 that did go down, it was very slight. And again, I don't know, I don't have the historical, I wasn't here, right? So I don't know if it's, numbers are jumping up because of coming out of COVID, school population enrollment, or people just participating more. My guess is it's probably a mixture of all of the above, but I don't know that. So yeah, it's been good and again, strong compared to all the schools that we deal with in the Midwatch. So we've been working on getting our fields ready, and anybody that knows spring sports in New England, it's a fluctuating thing, and schedules are constantly all over the place, considering field conditions. Our softball team has been on Marshall Park Field for 2 weeks. Our baseball team just got on there yesterday for the first time. And again, I've seen this before. We if a big rainstorm comes, I don't know what we got, but at least we're on them for now. Our grass fields on campus are just drying out, so we're just getting on there. So the first couple weeks are always tough. Have one field, and we're trying to facilitate everybody as best as possible. So we're working on that. We recently hired a new football coach. We had a committee and a hire, Casey McDonald. He comes to us with mainly a higher ed background. And, at times, you worry when you bring somebody new in and what is the commitment level, especially coming from a different atmosphere. But I've been, again, extremely excited about his commitment level. He applied for and accepted a para job in our school and recently notified me that he's just moving to town. So I can't think of a bigger commitment level than that. So that's good. And then the last thing, I had a question about branding, and I don't know if we want to address that, if anybody has anything before. I got some thoughts, but
I raised the issue, both of you personally as well as via email, with the superintendent and yourself earlier today, and it's a concern that I have mainly because I think that it's important that Lunenburg shows itself in a consistent and well put together manner, I guess is how I would put it. Not very eloquently, but nevertheless. And there was a long-standing issue of multiple Blue Knights running around Lunenburg. Our student representative was wearing tonight a variation of the logo. And this committee, before I joined it several years ago, at the point where we put the Blue Knight logo on the center court at Memorial Gym, standardized on that logo. And I think that that's a good thing to do and something that needs to be consistently revisited because the names and faces change as kids move up through the system and booster leaders move on to other things and new folks come in. It's just something that we need to be aware of and constantly, remind people.
Yeah.
And so I just raised that issue and I appreciate you
No, and
introducing it.
I totally agree. Before anybody even tipped me off to the different variations of the logo, that's something that I have experienced. It's something that means something to me. It means a lot to me. Whatever program I'm with, that we are branded the right way. And, the reasoning for that, and, feel free to disagree, but, I always feel that athletics is the marketing arm, of any school district. I can't, booster clubs, they're their own entity, so I can't make anybody do anything, right? But I certainly have suggested that they use preferred vendors, and those preferred vendors have been briefed on what our logo is, what our colors are. And the question has come back to me a few times from those vendors to say, hey, is this okay or is this not okay? That's good, and hopefully people do use those vendors because I agree with you on the logo. Every time that we host an athletic event or go on the road, whether we like it or not, our coaches, fans, student athletes, there's a perception that we're giving to everybody watching, right? And I think that we have great fans. I think that we have great student athletes, and I think that we have great coaches. So, taking that a step further, the association between the logo and those great fans and great student athletes and et cetera, that perception sticks with this logo, right? So when, we're all out to eat or we're in the supermarket, I want the association to be, hey, those are those great fans from Lunenburg, whether it be the name Lunenburg or the logo that it is. So, I totally agree with that. And I think your question was surrounding a track logo, a recent one, that had some wings on the side of it. And that vendor did ask me, was that okay? And I did approve that. And that was based on the fact that they were using the correct Nighthead logo with a sports-specific, that being track, brand on that. And, anybody, if you watch March Madness every year, they have, every team has the T-shirts, depending on what sneaker company you have, right? And you can use those same, sports-specific branding and your logo together, and that's kind of how I liken those to be the same.
Makes sense? Yeah. Okay.
So could I ask another question on a different topic?
Of course you can.
So, first of all, I fully echo everything you said about our coaches and athletes and the way we represent ourselves. I've commented several times here, and that I attend a lot of different events. I think we do a great job representing ourselves. Win or lose, we tend to outshine the competition when it comes to sportsmanship and class, and I think that starts at the top and works its way down. And I expect that we'll continue to do that. Could you talk a little bit about how we are financially organized? And this is a topic that did not really surface during the budget discussions that we just completed at our last meeting. But we raise a lot of money in Lunenburg for athletics that do not come in from taxpayers. They come in from user fees, and they come in from Booster Club fundraising, and a certain percentage obviously comes in from public funds. And could you just very at a high level kind of explain how that
I'm going
how
to
that all
invite
comes
Mr.
together?
Cassidy to address
Perhaps,
that.
yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
I know you can answer this, okay, but,
I was just going to ask for more.
okay. So the user fees go into our revolving account, and those pay, there's a large amount of our revolving account pays for our coaching, the secretary that works in the athletic department, officials. So every game has officials, we have to pay them. Supplies, equipment, anything that falls outside the local budget. So we have a practice of use the local money first, and then we'll go in and we'll use the revolving account if it goes beyond that. So it's equipment, officials, coaching salaries. So there's a lot that goes to. I'm sure I'm sure, can I?
Transportation.
Oh, my, yeah. I was in denial. I didn't even want to think about that, but, oh, yeah, of course, transportation, just a major cost of getting to other locations for our games. And a lot of coordination through the athletic department.
The coaches. Coaches as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one distinction that I think it would be good to make, and again, this is for the benefit of the public, I think people on the school committee know, but there's a distinction between when you see a kid wearing a uniform and when you see a kid wearing a jacket or a sweatshirt. Because there is a lot of money that gets raised by booster clubs, or it just gets checks written by parents that are not uniforms, but they're all that, like the sweatshirt that we saw tonight, I think is a good example.
Swag.
The swag, right, exactly. And I just want to make that distinction because we see a lot of that, and it looks great, but that actually does not come from taxpayer funds. That's coming from booster clubs and families.
The uniforms that are worn on the field, we pay for. And there's a replacement plan for every team, every season.
Similar to that, what Mr. Beardmore was mentioning, the banquets at the end of the season too, covered by boosters. Okay.
And then the final thing that I just wanted to raise, and this is really an item for the school committee, not for you, but I think it's appropriate to bring it up in this forum, is this committee amended the user fee policy a few years ago, and basically put in place there was a previous policy that said that fees would not be collected for students that were on free or reduced lunch. And it amended that policy a few years ago to move to basically a scale based on the reduced lunch cost for that category of low-income students. I would like to see that policy revisited, perhaps by the policy subcommittee. And I think that this kind of approaches an equity issue, and there's a long line of my logic on this. But ultimately, I don't think that that families and students in particular that are seriously financially challenged, I think that there's other things that we can do to fund our sports program other than doing it on their backs. And I also do not in any way, shape, or form want to further complicate a decision that a kid may make around participating in a sport. And financially challenged families frequently, the kids might take on part-time jobs to pay for their own personal expenses and extracurriculars and those kinds of things. That is time that is not spent on a sports field, and it's a very complex issue. And I think we should do whatever we can to alleviate some of that stress.
You might remember in the fall, we put out an appeal for families to complete the forms that would be reviewed to potentially make them eligible for free and reduced lunch, making folks aware that we use that information for more than just the free and reduced lunch. It's for free and reduced fees, et cetera. It's one of the ways that we can support families that struggle financially. And, you may recall that we had to put out that appeal because with the COVID funding, free lunch for everyone, people weren't filling out those forms because the lunch was free. But once we made folks aware that we use that information for much more than determining free or reduced lunch, we did have a lot of folks submit those forms for review.
So can I just add, the way that it's handled right now for us in athletics is we have a waiver at the front office, and that waiver is filled out if somebody, would like to waive the fee for athletics. And then it's cross-checked with the free and reduced lunch list. And if they qualify for a free and reduced lunch, they get waived for the athletic fee. So then we indicate that in our records. So it just, it
Okay,
gets waived.
I appreciate that, and we may need to just
Yeah.
align our policy to practice, because
practice.
that's not exactly the way our policy is written right now.
No
So-
harm in opening up the
Yep.
policy. Yep.
I had a few comments and a question, too. I want to thank you for coming. I've heard a lot of great things in the short time you're here. I know the boosters are really excited, too, to have you. And I think as a new administrator, a new person in the district, I think I always encourage people to look for those things to change and improve, and I think you're doing those things. So I keep doing what you're doing. Co-ops, I think, are always a great idea just to get our students more opportunities. From my experience, I find students who are active and involved in sports or other activities, they're going to be better students as well. So I think that's great to have those opportunities. One concern I had was, I know Marshall Park's doing some renovations. I think it's going to be great for our baseball and softball teams. Is there a plan, is there a concern of whether during those changes that we're not going to be able to use the field, and is there a backup plan for those fields?
There is not a plan yet. I was kind of waiting for those plans to move forward and, given a timeline and kind of figure out where we're at after that.
Yeah, historically, the members of the league work together to support when one member of the league is undergoing renovation of their facilities. There have been times that we have allowed other districts to use our field as their home field in and around the schedule that we have. So in other words, we don't clear the deck to make sure that they get the preferred schedule. But we as a district have accommodated that. We accommodated a request.
Oakmont last weekend.
Last weekend, because their field was still under snow.
Yep.
And we had the turf and it was cleared. So they played their game here. So my experience in this particular league is that the members of the league really do work cooperatively to support each other in meeting the needs. That said, we may be playing later in the evening or earlier in the afternoon somewhere else, but we've been met with a lot of cooperation.
And it
in the
goes
league.
beyond the league. It's kind of a common practice in athletics at every level. Even in my prior life, thinking, where can we get a turf field in the spring because, we need to get out there. So I think everybody's in the athletic world is always willing to help. Doesn't always work out the way you want it to or get the times that you always want, but, that's the hope.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I just echo, I'm really glad you're here. I've told you personally, I'll say it publicly, I think you're doing a great job, and I'm really excited about our athletics program. I think we're killing it, so good job.
All right.
Thank you for coming this evening.
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, next under old business, Keystone Quarterly Update.
This is just the quarterly update, just to keep you up to speed with what is ongoing priority work with the Keystone Collaborative. It continues to be a priority for them to seek out property to house their programs. It provides them a little bit more stability. Historically, they've had to work out rental lease agreements with school districts and spaces, and then the lease expires, and then they have to find a different location because a district may need that space back again. it's been an ongoing challenge. So that has been a priority, and they are looking to pursue a property right now in Leominster, which is nice because it's close to home for us.
Sure.
So we look forward to an update on that as well. You've got a census report. The projected census has tended to align with what they've got currently for enrollment, with the one exception of the Keystone Academy, which would be the high school level. And then they have set their budget for the next fiscal year as well.
Okay. So we need to, does anybody have any questions about the Keystone report?
I'll make a motion to accept the Keystone Quarterly Update.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All righty. So now we're on to the equity audit Q&A. And once again, I would say, probably about a month ago, we asked people to submit questions and said that we would make sure we would have those answers. If more questions come up, we are happy to answer more questions as we can. So I don't know how you wanted to do this. We can just basically go to each question and...
I put the questions, compiled them on a slide deck.
Okay.
For the convenience of everybody viewing at home.
All righty.
All right, so we did put out a request several times to families, making them aware that the audit was posted, and if they had any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, to share them with us, and we would address those. So first, the questions. How much was the audit? And we've already addressed this earlier this year. The total cost of the audit was $33,750. Was this legally required by the Department of Education? No, it was not. Did the authors of the report note the lack of participation on the part of parents in the survey? If so, what was their conclusion? We had 218 participants. Just as a means of comparison, we had 183 families complete the communication survey we conducted last spring. So we had a fairly good response. I was quite happy with the number of people that participated in yet another survey. But this is the best way to get access to the families' voices. We've tried a variety of things, forums, Zoom forums, in-person meetings. It's hard for families juggling all that they juggle to make themselves available to attend a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting. Sometimes when you get 5 minutes of quiet, it's easier to just take the survey.
Is there an industry norm for this kind of thing?
As far as
participation rates?
I don't know the answer to that question. I will say that last year when we did the climate survey, and that was we contracted with a group that has a valid, tested, normed survey to measure school climate. And we were disappointed with the total number of participants in the parent survey. And they've said that they were quite happy with that level because they don't typically get that level of response. And that was a really lengthy survey. Mm-hmm. So this participation rate is much more robust than even that. So I think we had good participation.
On the the communication survey, that was
Last spring, when we asked
this
about.
isn't the recent climate survey that you're
No.
referring to? Okay.
Right, and the recent climate survey is a repeat to see if there's
Yeah.
been
Yeah, we were
any
looking to,
change.
right.
It is a lengthy survey. It's not something that I would want to continue to repeat annually. But I think based on the fact that there was a goal around this and it needed to be measurable, we
Yeah, no,
determined that we would repeat the survey. Because I get that parents don't want to be
Do you
filling
happen
out a
to
survey
recall-
every week.
Do you happen to recall what the response rate was for the climate survey?
I'll have to go back and look.
It's not really, yeah, okay. That was a brutal survey. That was tough.
It is tough.
That was tough. I took it. And
And then didn't, and which is why,
Yep.
we have such a low completion rate, right? It's feedback that we have given. We have gotten feedback relative to that survey, about it not being inclusive enough in some questions, and that it's not clear when you're in the survey what the big picture is. So again, when we get feedback from parents, we do pass that information along because this is a way that this company can improve their survey, get better results, better data. Question was asked about bullying. Bullying is identified in the report. However, the author's main focus was on the LGBTQ+ community. Does this take away from the bullying that takes place daily regarding students who do not fall into one of the author's special categories? No, it does not. We address all reports of bullying regardless of the category of student. Can we have the raw data? That was a question from Mr. Beardmore, and the explanation was provided, and we've discussed this one already, but I wanted to make sure that it was captured in the total questions that were fielded. There was the concern that because we have a very small number of individuals in the district that would fall into this subgroup or several subgroups, that releasing that data could make it identifiable. And as a practice, they want to make sure that they are contributing to the feeling of safety in the community and in the school community. The author referenced negative impact caused by traditions. Would that be kids that don't feel welcome during the float building or something like that? And the answer was yes. The consensus after, looking through all of the responses, is that because we are a small district, floats are sometimes difficult for the newly incoming student to feel like they've been embraced and they're part of it. Obviously, this is something that we can work on. What that looks like exactly right now, I'm not sure. But this is information that is very interesting to us, and we want to be able to address it. We want all of our students to feel like they can participate and truly belong in all of the activities that we have available.
The word on that one, and it may have been intentional or not, the word consensus. Consensus of whom, I guess is my...
So when you take a look at comments, right, it's not just the numeric Likert scale they calculate. You're looking for emerging themes. So the researcher has to interpret what the comments mean. So the consensus of the team that did the analysis of the data was along this line, if that helps.
Yeah, I think that that's a topic that if changes are to be made, we need to get way the heck ahead of those changes.
Right.
And I'm sensitive to the issue. I think that there are things that we can do from a marketing and positioning standpoint that don't necessarily
Right.
affect the tradition itself.
Oh, I don't think
Oh, I don't think
Intervene
anybody,
Nobody
yeah.
wants the tradition affected,
But
but I think the
but-
kids
but just
all need
some
to be
people will
able-
jump to conclusions,
Yes.
which by the way, some of those conclusions have already been jumped to. So I think
Yes.
that it's important that we
Yep.
think way out in front of some of these things.
Agreed. Were the auditors privy to free lunch information? We did not provide them any of that information. They really did gather data from the DESI profile information. Were the auditors queried? They were not queried because they did not have any unmonitored access to students. They were not unmonitored in the building. Anytime that they were in the building, they were accompanied by an administrator. When the auditors spoke to students and staff about discipline and bullying came up, do we know if the legal definition of bullying was used? The bullying it wasn't a specific question in the focus group of course I ran into a problem. Technology is a wonderful thing. I just ran into an error and I had to reboot.
Oh, do you want,
Of course.
are you hosting
It's-
the Zoom? Because I could potentially share the,
I think Mrs. Peterson is still on the meeting, and she is a co-host,
okay.
but she could certainly make you a co-host as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm not even on, so I just
I
realized
don't
that.
think it'll take much more time to run through. The slide deck is also posted on our website. So back to the reference to bullying and the legal definition. It was the community that participated in providing this feedback that used that word. So it was not a word used by the auditors. So the assumption is that it's not the legal definition. And for the benefit of the viewers, there is a law, there is a legal definition for this term, but it is more commonly used outside of the legal definition. And, she referenced that it really was more about unkind or insensitive acts rather than a legal definition of bullying. Does the consultant know of a high-performing school or district that does a great job with creating that sense of belonging and warmth? And the answer here was no. It's pretty much a work in progress. And she's aware of a handful of districts that have made that commitment to doing this work. And in Massachusetts, those school districts are Linfield, Sudbury, and Watertown. She did give us a reference to a Catholic school in Wilmington, Delaware as well. So as we dig into mapping out priorities and plans for this work moving forward, we certainly can do outreach to these districts and have conversations with them about their work, where they are in the process, and any advice they would be able to offer to avoid maybe challenges that they encountered or maybe some strategies that worked particularly well. So that's part of the work that we will have to do moving forward. Does the consultant have suggestions for modifying our PD, our Professional Development Committee, to give more teacher voice? Because teachers expressed they didn't have a voice in the PD that they were provided. The consultant's response was put out a survey to the teachers and ask them for their input. And I just did make a notation here that we do that annually. And I will say that we get about half of our staff that respond to that survey. And we actually do review the feedback, and we do design our full-day PDs with breakout sessions that connect back to what teachers have asked for. There are some professional development needs, such as when you adopt a new curriculum. So in that regard, that's part and parcel of a plan for implementation of a curriculum. So in that way, teachers don't have the say in what that looks like. We typically are working with the publisher on those things. So there's lots of conversation internally to be had with teachers relative to the PD. Are there any specifics from families regarding communications as an issue, and what level would those have been, whether that's a teacher, school, district, or school committee level? Again, not a lot of very concrete or very specific guidance here. There was some reference to the website being easily translated into other languages for our English language learner families. At the time, we didn't realize that the translation was not functioning because apparently Google, our host site, made some changes without alerting anyone to the changes that they made. So immediately we started working to resolve that issue because we always did have access to translation on our website prior. She suggested that handbooks aren't readily available in hard copy in the schools. We do, upon request, provide printed copies, but we could certainly have some discussion around making a couple of print copies available at the office. And they interviewed many people throughout the process that they went through to gather information. And since the president of this company came from education, was a teacher, was a principal, worked for the Department of Ed. She understands in practical terms, how things work. And what she and the others were able to discern is that sometimes people say it's a communication issue when if you tease it out a little bit, and we have done this internally through our SWOT analysis that we have done in our schools, sometimes it's not so much that it was a communication issue as much as not liking the message that was communicated. And I think that that's a challenge in schools and school districts everywhere. You're not going to have 100% of people on board with a message and a direction every time. But that, again, this is information that we gleaned from our communication survey last spring, from our SWOT analysis that we did in each school. So this was information that was already on our radar, and it came up again here. Other concerns that were shared via email. One, as it relates to recommendation number 2, this individual expressed concern that special events and traditional events like homecoming would be changed. I don't think we're looking to see any of our events and traditions go away, but what can we do to make sure that those events feel more inclusive for all members of our community? In regards to recommendation number 4, concerned that putting student faces and stories to websites could in fact have a counterproductive outcome relative to their privacy. So again, these are things that the team will absolutely look at in the context of the report itself, as we try to determine of all that is here in this report, what are our priorities? What would we focus on first? What would we want to allocate the most resource to right away? This, whatever comes from this, is going to be a multi-year effort. And lastly, there was a suggestion, relative to a personal experience with growing up in a small town, and the fact that relationships form despite cultural or monetary academic status. And that is true, but there are always the ones, and they were probably there then as well, that lingered on the fringe and were never really feeling that sense of belonging. So again, the comments, the questions, the concerns, we will look at all of these as we move forward with planning.
So, as we move forward and next steps and all, to go back to the question asked earlier, we have not made decisions about what we're doing with these recommendations.
Correct.
We are still looking at them. We're going to tease them out.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean we're going to gravitate to everything. We're certainly not going to wipe out homecoming.
Right.
That is not the intent. And how will the public know where we are with this process? And how will we know, obviously?
Yep. So we will be providing a presentation to help the school committee and the public understand the interconnectedness of all the work that we're doing in the district. No effort that we're making is in isolation. It's not siloed. There is overlap and through line to all of the major areas that we've been working on and are going to continue to work on. We will provide that presentation. It's not going to include a map out of what we're going to do in terms of the recommendations. What we're going to do in terms of the recommendations, that's one piece of information that we need to consider. As I've reported, we are in the process with the Department of Ed in a program around strengthening family-school partnership. There are going to be some priority focus areas that emerge from that work. We have the climate surveys that will provide us some insight and additional information. And we do want to do a follow-up communication survey because it's important. It connects back to your work and your goals, as well as reframing things to better meet the needs of the population that we're trying to communicate more effectively with. So there are going to be many data points that we need to consider. And I am going to tell you that there is going to be overlap of things that come from the equity audit report, the priorities from the framework for strengthening family partnership. It's all connected. We will sort through all of this late spring, so at the tail end of the school year, and through the summer months, because it's a lot of information to go through and make sense of and put together in a cohesive way so that it doesn't feel like overload to everyone. We're working on that, and we're working on that, and it's all part of the same focus. We will put this together and incorporate it into the strategy for continuous improvement. Now, will the 4 existing big bucket areas exist? Will they exist in their current form? Will the priority action plans under each of those big bucket areas continue to exist? Do we need to develop new priority areas and action plans? We may. We may morph one of the big bucket areas as well. We always bring a proposed revised strategy for continuous improvement, which is essentially the district improvement plan, to the school committee in the fall. And as you all experienced this year, it's also connected back to superintendent goals and school improvement goals. Again, the interconnectedness, it's a little bit like if you've got multiple people in a rowboat and they all have an oar, you're going to go somewhere if everybody's rowing in the same direction. If everybody's left to their own devices, you're not making any headway. So it has been, for my entire tenure here, purposeful that the leadership team works with me on the action plans in the strategy. They then make connections from that overarching document back to their school improvement plans, as well as setting district educator evaluation goals connected back to that as well. All of this just informs what goals we need to set, what actions we need to take. But ultimately, it will all be incorporated into a document that will be brought forward to the school committee for some discussion. I think it came before the school committee a couple of times before it was finally approved, because we wanted to make sure that any goals that were approved also connected back into that document. The TFM report will also, it's already there, and it will continue to be part of the strategy for continuous improvement and the action plans there. So we'll give you a hint of the overview of the work and the interconnected nature of it. But the actual map out of what do we propose we should be doing and taking action on, that will be coming back to the committee in the early fall.
Okay.
So I just want to make a comment, and thank you for going through all the questions that you've received. I think that's we ultimately landed on a good way of doing this. This survey was commissioned before I joined the school committee, or the audit. I guess it's more than a survey; it's an audit. And my take on it has been, having come along middle to late of process, has been let it unfold and kind of see what happens. And I think that it affirmed a lot of the concerns that I have, that have surfaced in other surveys that we've done previously around climate, around feeling of belonging and safety and inclusion and those kinds of things. And that's as I articulated in our last meeting, that's a hot topic for me, and it's going to continue to be a hot topic for me. I grew up here. I love Lunenburg. I really love the traditions in Lunenburg. I want those traditions to last well beyond my lifespan, but I want them to evolve to meet the needs of everybody in the community. And I think that there are some really practical, tactical things that surfaced in this that you can just take care of. Mm-hmm. Language kind of issues, availability issues, translation issues. Like, those are tactical things that it's good that it surfaces someplace. You can put it on a checklist and execute. There are other things that take a whole lot more thought and possibly more data. And I think that that's where, frankly, my concerns and disappointment with this survey really lie. Because I was hoping, I think that when you identify a shortcoming, there's lots of different ways to come at that shortcoming. Sometimes you can come at it with a hammer, and sometimes you can come at it with a knife. You can't come at it with a knife when you don't know exactly where the problem exists. And the point that I made about crosstabs last week and my request for the data itself really kind of gets to the heart of that. Okay, if we have, are these deficiencies spread out evenly across all cohorts, or are there specific cohorts that we're clearly falling short with? And the truth is, I don't know the answer to that question right now. And it's a little bit aggravating to me that I don't, but I don't. And I would have hoped that this survey would have helped us to surface some of those or give us some opportunities for targeting interventions or what have you. I don't know. But I am a little bit disappointed in it and their approach and methodology in that regard. I think that there are things that we could have done perhaps to anonymize the data and still surface some potential areas to address around particular cohorts, as I've said. So maybe that's something we can do in the future. Maybe that's something that we could get some guidance or ideas. And I'm looking forward to the presentations that you bring forward in terms of how we're going to operationalize some of this information, because some of it's a tall order. So.
My comment would be to remind us and to remind the public that the equity audit was suggested by the school committee, because it was part of our goal to do this equity audit. It wasn't suggested by the superintendent. She readily agreed, but it was our thought because of the concern of making sure that all kids feel equally included, and all staff members, and anybody part of our community, all families, that everybody feel equally included. And that was important to us as a school committee, and that is why we started this to begin with. So I think it's a fair amount of information. It's not as detailed as some would have hoped, but I think it's a fair amount of information, and it provides us with some general ideas of where to go and where to seek more answers. So, like anything else, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, and I think that this, report comes to us from an objective outside point of view, looking at, when I think about equity, what do you have going on here that's working? What are areas that we would recommend that you could spend some time and energy focusing on to improve? I think that, as we dig in, and this happens even when we dig in on MCAS data. You say, okay, but why are we seeing that? We need another data point. We need to go digging to find out some additional information. This is just the first step on a journey to seek out additional information to help us make progress down this pathway. But it's definitely it's a journey that involves inquiry and curiosity, right? And intention.
Yes.
I would agree with what everything's been said. I just wanted to add, too, I think it is a culture thing. We had talked about culture before, and I just want to add in the culture aspect, too, because it's the culture of the school. But also, going back to what the superintendent said, collecting data, I think will be important, too. Looking at tonight with the athletics, we heard close to 50% of the students are participating in athletics. I want to make sure that we have 100% of the students participating in something. So maybe it's also the music program. Maybe we can collect data points on all the different organizations that students are involved in, and then we can look at, and the administration can look at the data and see which students are not getting involved, so we can get 100% involvement in the community, in organizations, and even maybe, we had talked about this before, maybe they're involved in, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, something else outside of the school, and then we still have those students being connected to
Boys and Girls Club.
to the community.
Yeah, I would agree. Because not everybody beats to the same drum, and not everybody wants to be involved in athletics or music, but if, this- you know, you want to make sure people are connected, and that's important. So anything else on this topic? It says action, do we have to action anything?
No, this
Under
really
action,
could have
But there
been.
really isn't any action to be taken. We're not accepting the report, that's not what this was about, so I'm gonna say there's no action. My action will be to say there's no action. And we'll go on to the second read of policies 3203, 3301, 3302, 3307, 3401. Any comments on those policies? Then do I have a motion to waive the second read?
I'll make a motion to waive the second reading of the policies just mentioned.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So we are waiving those, and now we have a third read.
Tony just left me hanging by myself.
Oh,
I
we're
think that
happy
may
to
have
help
been
you
some-
if
They're
you
not
wish.
actually very long.
Method to his madness.
I know. All right, let me start with the first one in the folder, so.
I think the last time we were reading some, you had left him dry, to be honest.
You guys work together, a good team.
He was on the screen way out there in space reading them. Yes.
Alrighty, we'll start with third read of 3103, Budget Adoption Procedures, Fiscal Management and Non-Instructional Operations 3000, Budget 3100, Budget Adoption Procedures 3103. The general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts also establish the following procedures pertaining to the school committee budget. A, public hearing by school committee. As per Chapter 71, Section 38N of the general laws, the school committee of each city, town, or regional school district shall hold a public hearing on its proposed annual budget not less than 7 days after publication of a notice thereof in a newspaper having general circulation in such city, town, or district. Prior to such public hearing, said committee shall make available to the public at least one copy of said proposed budget for a time period of not less than 48 hours, either at the office of the superintendent of schools or at a place so designated by said committee. At the time and place so advertised, or at any time or place to which such hearing may from time to time be adjourned, all interested persons shall be given an opportunity to be heard for and against the whole or any part of the proposed budget. Such hearing shall be conducted by the quorum of school committee. For the purposes of this section, a quorum shall consist of a majority of the members of said school committee. B, adoption. The action of the school committee in adopting the budget following the public hearing shall be summarized, and the vote of each member on any amendments offered to the proposed budget shall be recorded. C, fiscal budget. The annual school department budget becomes official when it has been affirmed as part of the town budget by the Lunenburg Finance Committee and has been passed at the town meeting. The fiscal year shall begin on the first day of July and shall end on the 30th day of June, unless another provision is made by general law. MASC, the district budget shall be adopted by the school committee at the cost center level. Cost centers are established by DESI, while line items are established by the town. Using cost centers aid in organizing the budget, reporting to the state, and increasing transparency for taxpayers. Cost centers will be agreed upon by the committee and administration. The budget is adopted by a simple majority. Authority for adoption of the final school budget bottom line lies with the citizens who comprise and who are entitled to vote at the town meeting. The school budget is presented as part of the total town budget for action at the annual town meeting. Source, MASC, updated 2022. Legal references, MGL 7134 and 7137. Town charter, see local reference. Cross-reference, DBJ Budget Transfer Authority. Go back. All right. Fiscal Management and Non-Instructional Operations 3000, Budget 3100, Budget Planning Schedule 3101. The major portion of income for the operation of the public schools is derived from local property taxes, and the school committee will attempt to protect the valid interest of the taxpayer. However, the first priority in the development of an annual budget will be the educational welfare of the children in our schools. The annual budget process will formally begin in late October with a general budget orientation session for all administrators. Coordinators, teachers, and other staff members are expected to submit their budget requests to the principal in sufficient time for principals to review budget requests and submit their recommended budgets to the superintendent before the second week in December. After their review, the superintendent will then present their budget recommendation to the school committee no later than the first scheduled meeting in February. Before completing their budget review and before voting a full budget amount, the school committee will conduct a public hearing on its budget in accordance with Chapter 71, Section 38N of the general laws. Such hearings shall be held not less than 7 days after publication of a notice thereof in a newspaper having general circulation in the town. It shall be the responsibility of the superintendent to coordinate the submission of the budget to the town manager, school committee, select board, and finance committee. Source: MASC, updated 2022, legal references, MGL 7137, 7138N, Town Charter, see local reference. Adopted Lunenburg School Committee, April 26th, 2001, reviewed September 23rd, 2009, revised and approved January 8th, 2020. All right, and last one, 3104, fiscal year budget planning and schedules. Fiscal management and non-instructional operations 3,000, budget 3,100, fiscal year / budget deadlines and schedules 3,104. In compliance with the law, the school department must observe a fiscal year beginning July 1st and ending June 30th. The school department budget for the coming fiscal year is placed before the annual town meeting for approval. Legal references: MGL 7134, 7138N, Chapter 44, Section 56. MASC. Preparation of the annual budget will be scheduled in stages throughout the school year with attention to certain deadlines established by law and charter. The calendar year for the school district budget preparation shall be set by calculating backward from the final adoption date of the overall town budget at annual town meeting. The school committee will also observe the statutory requirement of holding a public hearing on the proposed budget not less than 7 days after the notice for this hearing has been published in a local newspaper. Source: MASC, updated 2022, legal references: MGL 7137, 7138N, Town Charter, see local reference.
Here we go. Good job.
And just for everybody's reference, the MASC was left in this draft so that people would know that the red language was coming from MASC as a recommendation, but in the final cleanup version, MASC will be removed.
Okay.
That makes sense. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of those policies? No? Did we get any feedback from anybody about those policies?
We did not.
No? Then can I have a motion to approve those policies?
I will make a motion to approve policies 3101, 3103, and 3104.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All righty. Policy's taken care of. All right, that brings us to reports. Does anyone have any reports this evening? Mr. Beardmore?
So the Capital Planning Committee has not met, but there's been a lot of activity pertaining to capital planning over the course of the last couple of weeks. A few weeks ago, the Select Board, I think I mentioned at our last meeting, voted to appropriate $980,000. I don't remember the exact number. I can probably $986,000 from ARPA money to fund the ambulance and the 2 6-wheel dump trucks that were on the dump truck plow sanders for the DPW. And since then, the town manager has revised her recommendation to acknowledge that funding from the ARPA in the capital plan. So the capital plan that you see on the warrant will still include those items, but it'll just show that it's funded by ARPA. To remove the funding from the special purpose stabilization account because it's no longer needed for those 3 items, and to add $467,286.98 to fund an additional 6 items. The first of which is the Turkey Hill fire alarm system. There's also the radio system for public safety, the culvert initial design and engineering work, or design work for the Northfield culvert, a half-ton crew cab pickup truck for the DPW, sidewalk and repair work for TC Passios, and treatment for the town beach area at Lake Whalum and Marshall Pond. Notably not included on that list is still the film for the safety, for the building safety, the windows. Excuse me, it's late. The words are not coming out. The plow sander for the school department, as well as the initial engineering work for the track and field facility. I relayed to Mrs. Archambault this morning that I had today a conversation with Ms. Jeffries, the chairman of the select board. And I had previously shared some serious concerns with both the town manager and Mr. Alonso, the chair of the capital planning committee. In my mind, both the plow sander for the school department, the more I think about it, the more it's a big issue. We've just spent quite a bit of money on plow sanders for the DPW. We're still in line when it comes to an evening icing event. And I experienced a couple this year going to basketball games. And I think that rises to the level of consideration. And I've also been at the track and field facility this spring, and I'm noticing additional deterioration just from what I observed last fall. And in my mind, relative to some of the items on this list, I think that those two items, you can argue, and there were substantial arguments about the film, and I want to pursue other ways of addressing those issues. But I think there's a strong argument to be made around the plow sander and the track and field facility for some additional consideration. One of the things that Mr. Jeffries suggested that we consider, and I will raise this as a potential item for next week's meeting, is to potentially revise or look at our request, our ARPA request to the select board, and perhaps consider those two items for consideration. And we can discuss it in some detail, perhaps at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think that particular topic should probably go to the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Anybody else with the report?
I have a report, I just have to find it. The primary school met on the 27th, is that Monday? Yes.
Yes.
The week goes right now. We spoke a lot about updating the handbook, the CSIP. Mr. Adams had brought up some ideas for next year. He's kind of toying with the idea of having like a student government. So I have one of the representatives from each class check in with him. I think that is adorable. I cannot wait to hear the reports they get back. So I really hope that goes forward. They're also looking at doing some more after-school activities because this was such a success. And Brian, your son was at one of the after-school activities because I know Dylan was, right?
Oscar,
and they had the best time. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
March 13th, we had a new preschool teacher started, and Mr. Adams reported she's settling in very well. Kindergarten finished up, this was great. Happy Healthy chapter, they encouraged the kids to go home and eat a rainbow over the weekend. So eat all the different colors of a rainbow. I thought that was super cute, and there's no way in heck my kids would have done that. They would have ate Cheetos.
Gotta buy them some Lucky Charms cereal.
They just discovered this recently. It was a terrible idea. They love it. We've added a new food group. It's Lucky Charms. Grade 1, they were doing a lot of work looking for more writing opportunities for the kids. And they're happy where the kids are at math. Sorry, I'm going through grade 2. We're finishing up Home Sweet Habitat, which was really cute, and they're doing a school trip, the 10th through the 12th to Beaver Brook. Creating scenes from their favorite books with treats. That was actually a really cute idea too. So going through all their different candies and creating different scenes. Like our student representative said, the Tiger performance was on the 31st. That would tie into their friendship presentation. So everything's great at the primary school.
Always good to hear. Go ahead.
Turkey Hill is going to be meeting tomorrow. The building design committee was planning to meet Monday. They didn't have the meeting. We're planning to meet next Monday. At our last meeting, we discussed that we're planning to meet at our future meeting to discuss more of the details. So trying to come up with more of some rough numbers. It's going to be tough, but rough numbers without hiring an engineer to see what we could do with the buildings, and also come up with more of a timeline so that we could present to the select board and then potentially select to the citizens. But it's now working out more of the details of what the timeline is going to look like and what the best estimates of these are going to cost based off of all the data that we've collected through the past few years. And I also reached out to the superintendent, and she used the facilities director as well to give us information about the Brooks House and what kind of upgrades that would need too, so we can share that with the committee. So again, we can have a good idea of what the numbers might look like.
Do you think they're thinking fall town meeting maybe?
Possibly, yeah. I think it's, again, too, feedback from the select board and where we go with the numbers, because you can only get so much on a napkin kind of thing.
Right.
So you need really some engineering numbers too. But it's also that plan and the timeline and how to present that to the town where it seems like the citizens really want the big picture. So, okay, what's that gonna cost? And what's the breakdown of each of those and what's the timeline gonna look like?
Okay, thank you. The Finance Committee has met 3 times since our last meeting. They've been very busy. On March 22nd, they continued their departmental meetings, including our budget, so thank you to Dr. Byrne and Mr. Cassidy for their presentation that evening. On March 23rd, there were more departmental meetings, and then on March 30th was the public hearing for warrant articles. And they talked about the capital plan with the information that Mr. Beardmore just imparted about the fire alarm upgrade added in. And they voted on their recommendations for town meeting, and they had said that maybe April 6th would be additional public hearing, but they said at the end of the March 30th meeting that was not necessary. So the April 6th meeting will be a regular meeting. And that's basically what I got from that, outside of Finance Committee stuff that really doesn't affect us. So those are reports, public comments. Our public is missing, and there's no one online, is there?
There are a couple.
Oh, see, I can't see.
Yeah, there's an iPhone out there.
That's why this is difficult, isn't it? If somebody has a telephone and we can't see you raise your hand and you wish to make a public comment, go right ahead.
And just speak up.
Hearing nothing, I'm going to assume that no one has a public comment. So we'll move on to topics for future discussion. We will add in the discussion about the capital plan items for next week, if we can do that. We have ongoing topics of bullying and THES. So the discussion about bullying, when we initially had talked about it, we had thought a workshop style.
So I've reached out to the school department attorney, and she would be available to attend that June 29th meeting that we scheduled just to approve carryover of open POs at the end of the year. That would have been the only topic on the agenda. She would be available to sort of provide the committee and obviously the public an overview of what the law is and what schools have to do and what that legal definition of bullying is, and how schools need to respond in order to be compliant with the law. So that is a possible option if that's of interest. It could be a straight presentation followed by any questions that you may have, or you could opt to do it in a workshop model. Because we could, if we opted to have it in a workshop model, we could still vote to approve the carryover of the open POs.
Of course. I'd like, this is a subject that I think really needs digging into. And that would be, I would be fine. I think it's good that if the attorney comes and discusses what the obligations are by the school, but I feel kind of like it's like the busing. We're not obligated to bus all these people, but we will, because it's better. And I think that I'd like to have, at some point, and it could be that we do it with Melissa here, the June 29th, and then maybe in the fall somewhere. I'd like the guidance people or the social workers, or I'd like those people in on this conversation. I certainly don't want them on the 29th of June. They've had a long year. They don't need a school committee meeting on the 29th of June. But I want that conversation.
Okay.
Because, I know what the legal definition is of bullying, and I've seen that happen, but I've also seen some very cruel things happen that are not the legal definition of bullying. And we need a plan, whether it's legally bullying or not, we need to know what's being done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a topic that is like 100% perception.
Yes.
Somebody may watch, I had this happen to one of my children, and had a teacher say, well, that wasn't that was not a problem, that was just what happens. But that is not what it felt like to that child. I think that's very important to get out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So to start on the 29th of June with the legal stuff is fine, I'm okay with that. But then I think it has to flip into something more organic. I don't know what do other people think.
I'm not going to be here, but I do want to ask. Opinion of
Unfortunately.
I know. I'd love to get the data from the schools of reports, because what are we looking at here? Because I'm hearing from parents that there's a huge issue. I'd like to know, and I know I'm not going to be naive enough to say that every kid is reporting being bullied, but I'd like to know from the principals, how many cases are we dealing with? And I know it's hard to logistically classify, like, well, this is bullying, this is just an argument between two children.
Yeah.
But some roundabout data to look at, whether that's through when we're going to our advisory council meetings and the principals can just report back to each member who's on those councils, or the principals come and sit in on this workshop. I don't know what the best way to do it, but I'm curious to see is how big of an issue is this in the community?
Good question.
So I basically agree with the approach that you just articulated, Mrs. Archambault. I think my pause here is that June 29th is 3 months away.
I know.
We continue the conversation in the fall, and all of a sudden, we're talking about potentially affecting change sometime in the fall of
December,
2024
yeah.
or something,
It's been
right?
on the agenda for a while.
So my thought as you were discussing this is, number one, I feel like we can all do our own homework, or perhaps, if it's just a scheduling thing, we can ask the attorney to give us the pertinent information, or even record a video or something. I'm not sure how much discussion is required from the attorney. But I do think that there's a baseline of information that we all need to
Right.
kind of have. So I think that there's a need there, and so the way you outlined it, I think makes sense. I'm just wondering if there's a way we can accelerate the conversation.
I can see if she has any availability sooner outside of our regularly scheduled meetings, and then we could perhaps
can
schedule a separate meeting just for this.
Yeah.
Be fine with
I mean, the whole perception of kicking the can on an issue like this
I
just
know,
doesn't sit well with me,
It doesn't sit
so.
well with me either.
Yeah.
Well, I would just,
get it.
I would just say this, that all of our principals have been trained in how to handle bullying reports. There are investigations, there are findings, they follow what they're supposed to follow. I know that there's, oftentimes a level of frustration on our end because parents may say that their child is being bullied, but they never reported it. And if you don't report it, you can't investigate it. And I know that people have claimed that their child is being bullied, and by the investigation, it's found not to be legally bullying, and other means to address and remedy a situation of conflict between students has sometimes been put on the table and declined by a parent. So it's complicated, right? And it does come down to this issue of perception. So I just want to reassure you that if we don't have this conversation inside of the next month, we are still acting in a way that is appropriate and in compliance with the law and the way we have to act upon. I've had conversations myself with students who are witness to what they say is bullying, and they don't report it as the bystander. The administrators can't act on it if they don't get the report. That said, there are several things that we're working on as part of our district safety team. We've been exploring anonymous tip platforms. So we'll be moving forward with something like that. That's a new method that reports can be made, and maybe that's a more convenient thing. So there will be a rollout of that platform, and that's another opportunity for us to explain to kids and to parents what that process looks like. When you file this complaint or provide this tip, this is what will ensue as a process, and this is how we follow, right? So there are things like that being done. I was just looking to confirm in my email. I had asked the administration at the middle high school to reach out to the district attorney's office because they have presentations that they provide to schools. Some are designed for the student target audience, and some are designed for a parent target audience. And they are working to secure dates this spring for 2 student assembly presentations. Given that our seniors will be exiting soon, we discussed having the 8th grade combined with the 9th grade because the 8th grade will be moving up and entering into the high school. So one assembly for the 8th and 9th graders and another for the 10th and 11th graders, and another one in the evening for parents. That would be open district-wide for parents. So we are working on some things to address misinformation, misperception, and so on. So
That's great. I think this
work
is
in
all stuff
progress.
that, we're never going to be done on this.
Never.
You can't fix the problem, but you can make steady progress, and it's kind of like the athletic budget issue, and I don't mean to compare the two, but as kids and parents come along, we have to constantly resurface this stuff because we're all, to some extent, new.
Right.
I would like to see the younger kids also. I know that the Tiger presentations come in, but I think the primary school took something from it. I think the elementary school thought they were too cool for school and they're like, oh, this is lame. And honestly, from what I hear, there's quite a lot of, conflict between some of the elementary kids. I'd like to see more presentations for them, as well as how the parents can, another one for the parents and even like you got for the other one, just because as this, I don't know, generation gets older, they have more access to the phones and the social media at younger and younger ages. I think it's valuable for that young level to have these presentations also, not like some fun Tiger presentation that's not grasping their attention anymore,
We
unfortunately.
can certainly explore whether or not the DA's office has anything that's that age level
Or
appropriate.
even the middle school too, yeah.
When I was teaching, and I know that's a million years ago, but when I was teaching, we had a gentleman come in, who probably isn't there anymore, who worked through our elementary school and taught kids how to be active bystanders, what to do. And we'd play act it, and the kids would do it, something would happen on the playground, and we would say, what are you supposed to do? And the kids would know what to do. You know, I don't know if anybody does that anymore. It was a gentleman from the battered women's shelter that probably doesn't even exist anymore. But it was very, very effective, teaching kids what to do, because the power is in the bystanders.
It is, yeah,
You know, if the bystanders say something, the rest of it stops,
yep.
you know?
Right, and
Yep.
teaching them that it's a safe place to go and report this. You don't
Right.
have to do it in front of everyone. You
Yep.
can go
Right,
outside.
right.
And their kids are now doing that on social media. I mean, I've heard, but I've heard anecdotal stories from, social media related anecdotal stories that are the cyber equivalent of what Carol just described, and I mean, so kids can do that if you show them how,
Right.
and you.
Now,
yeah,
if they feel
yeah.
empowered to do
Yeah.
it, they can do it.
Yeah.
I've seen them do it.
Yeah.
But, of course, like I say, that was a long time ago.
Yep.
But I'm sure there's somebody out there, maybe even somebody on staff, who would have that ability to do that kind of thing. So,
I made a note to myself, but I can talk with the chief as well.
yeah.
If they have availability of a community outreach officer in conjunction perhaps with our SRO to talk about how to approach that. And like I said, I've had conversations with students, and through our conversations I've advised them that they can take on some of their own power and their voice, and to seek out our guidance counselors, because they can often help script a response. When students are saying this to you, this is how you can find your voice, and this is a script that you can provide in response to whatever comments are coming your way, right? So it's helping kids, find their power a bit too. So it's a multi-pronged effort, I think.
I think it's great that we air it and flesh it out to whatever extent we can.
Okay, then, that brings us to the end of the list. I would take a motion to adjourn.
We'll make a motion to adjourn at 9:03 PM.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So this was the